Hi, welcome to The Conversation. My name is Brendan Malone, and in this episode, I want to talk about Billie Eilish, and in particular, the new documentary, Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry, and the fascinating insights it provides into the current cultural crisis that we find ourselves in. So last night I watched the brand new Apple TV Plus documentary Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry. Now before I take a dive into some of the fascinating insights that I gained from watching this doco, let me just start by saying that I think Billie and her brother are an extremely talented duo. They have this ability to write songs and to produce songs, and her voice is amazing. They're a great duo. Her James Bond theme that's been out for quite a few months now has been on my Spotify favourites list for that entire time. It really is that good. In fact, I think it's probably the second best Bond theme ever released after Adele's Skyfall. So, and that's saying something, but they are very, very talented people. But what I think was so fascinating about this documentary are the insights that it offers about the current cultural crisis that we find ourselves in. You see, Billie Eilish is a girl who has been thrown into a world of vacuous superficiality and lies, and that's one of the things that's just so evident in this documentary, that this young girl has just been chucked in the deep end, effectively, in the world of sort of, I guess, mass marketing, mass media, the music industry, the entertainment industry, that whole thing, however you want to describe it. It's just a completely vacuous lie. And she's very much been thrown into that lie. And there's a really beautiful moment of truth that happens in this documentary when she meets Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber has been a long time sort of hero of hers. She's loved his music since she was a young child. And there's this scene where I think they're both at Coachella together, and I think they were waiting to go on stage, and she sees him, she recognizes him, and all of a sudden she stands back like this young girl who doesn't quite know what to do when she's meeting her idol. And he just looks at her and he waits for her, and then she draws a little bit closer, and then he opens up his arms and she just falls into this embrace with him, this beautiful, loving hug that he gives her, and then she just breaks down sobbing, and she cries and cries, and this goes on for minutes, and he just holds her that entire time. And it was a really profoundly beautiful moment of truth that just highlighted the vacuousness and the lies of that world that she's caught up in. Because here are these two child stars, really, these child musical stars who understand each other and understand the vacuousness and the lies of the world that they are both caught up in a way that no one else really can. And they just find each other in the midst of this bleak, dark, sort of barren wasteland, and there's this moment of genuine friendship and love between them. It's actually really, really beautiful, and it's just so true, because it speaks to the truth of what is missing so often in our culture. Whether we like it or not, Billie Eilish, I think, is a representative of, a high priestess of a culture, a new generation of young people who are living in a culture without culture. A culture without hope, a culture of despair, a culture of nihilism and darkness and brokenness. These are people who have no meaning because they have been sold down the river by previous generations who have stripped anything meaningful out of the culture. Like when you're watching this documentary and you hear a 17-year-old girl say that she didn't think she would make it to that age, that is as shocking as it is tragic. Or it should be shocking, but the problem is it's not really that shocking to us anymore, because so many young people are in the exact same space as she is. They view the world through this nihilistic sense of despair and hopelessness. At one point, she rattles off a list of all the things that she has achieved. This is towards the very end of the documentary when she's about to be awarded a Grammy. And she's listing off all these things that she's got. And as she's going through the list, you sort of get the sense that she's just waiting to add a but in there. That she's, I've got the car of my dreams. I'm famous as F. She says she's rattling off this list of things, and what you're waiting for, and what you get the sense is, well, I did anyway, that what she actually wanted to say was, but and then I'm still not happy. Like I said, this is a culture without hope because this is a culture without meaning. And Billie Eilish is an artistic voice who represents and speaks for that culture. She speaks for the nihilism, the brokenness, and the darkness that it contains, the great vacuous lie that it offers to the world. And this should be shocking to us, but it's not, because sadly it's just far too common. Here in my own country, a couple of years ago, when suicide statistics were being discussed, there was this new category, this new risk group that was discovered, and it was males aged 20 to 25. Now, we've always known that males aged 40 to 45 are in an increased risk group, and that's obviously because you start to have the midlife crisis. I remember when it hit me, you all of a sudden wake up one day and realise that the tomb is a lot closer than when your first birth and arrival into the world was. It's quite a sort of shocking thing for a male, and you start questioning, what is the meaning of my work, and am I contributing to the world, all those kinds of things, and that's the sort of the midlife crisis. And some males, they just don't have any way of navigating that little black hole and finding their way out of it. But to identify a new risk group, males aged 20 to 25, to me, that's just insane. It is insanely shocking. I remember being 20 to 25. I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof, or I thought I was 10 foot tall and bulletproof. I was about 40 kgs heavier than what I am now. I was a big boy who was massively overweight, but I still, in my mind, I still thought I was the best looking, the funniest guy in the room. I thought that every time I went to a party, every girl wanted to marry me. And that's the crazy thing about being that age. That's how you should be. You need the wisdom of older men to sort of knock those edges off you and to sort of knock you into shape. That's what should be going on when you're 20 to 25. You should not be a 20 to 25-year-old male who is looking at the world through such a lens of despair and hopelessness that you think there is no point in even carrying on. That is truly shocking. That is the culture that Billie Eilish is speaking for. And here's the thing, so much of that culture of nihilism and despair has been gifted, if that's even the right word, to this generation of young people by their parents. There's a fascinating little moment in this documentary, it's very brief, when her mother is talking about all of the fears that she thinks Billie Eilish's generation should have about the world. And she's listing off all of this apocalyptic stuff, the current state of politics and racism and climate change and the apocalypse. It's crazy. It's just this sort of lack of perspective and hope. But here's the thing, she's saying this is the fear that her daughter should have, and she's responding to the complaint that some people make that the lyrics of Billie Eilish are really dark. And she says, well, what would you expect, that living in this dark, awful world? Here's the thing, that's really her mother's fear and lack of meaning and lack of hope being transmitted to the daughter. And there is this quite profound artistic moment in one of her videos that just is a beautiful and powerful but extremely dark visual metaphor for exactly that awful, horrible gift. And this is something that the documentary shows us. Billie Eilish actually was the creative mind who came up with this concept, where in one of her videos she is shown drinking this glass full of pitch black goo, just dark, nihilistic evil, and she drinks the whole thing down, and then next minute she is effectively bleeding this black nihilism from her eyes. It's the tears that are coming out of her. And I thought to myself, what a powerful metaphor for exactly what our culture is doing to so many young people. It offers in them this black darkness and nihilism, and then it looks at them in this situation where they can't contain it and can't make sense of it, and it's literally doing great harm to them, and it doesn't know what to do with all of that. I contrast this with what goes on in our household. My daughter, one of my young daughters, came to me the other night, and she was just in a state of anxiety about something that was happening at school the next day, and she was just sort of beside herself. And so all I did was I pulled her close, I hugged her, I embraced her tightly, and I just said to her, I whispered into her ear, remember Jesus in the boat. And she says, yeah, he calms the storm. And I said, exactly, he calms the storm. There is always hope. There is always hope. And all of a sudden, this sort of moment of, I could feel it as I was holding her close. She just relaxed and leant into that hope, and it just gave her a sense of it's going to be okay. And I said to her before I sent her back to bed, look, it's okay. And whenever you find yourself facing sort of the stress and overwhelming anxiety, remember there's always hope. Jesus is always there in the boat with you to calm the storm. And this is something I'm so grateful for. My faith, it doesn't make me perfect, and it doesn't mean that I have a world that is all of a sudden free from problems and suffering and evil, but it actually gives me a way to make sense of that, to contextualize it, and to actually ensure that I don't lose my way and start drinking the black goop and then find myself bleeding it from my eyes because I don't know what else to do, because I'm just caught in a cycle of nihilism and brokenness and despair. You see, for me, the music of Billie Eilish is like a mirror. It's a mirror that gives us an insight into a culture that is desperately drowning in a sea of despair and hopelessness, a culture that is mired in nihilism and where everything is sort of filtered through the hopelessly unreliable notion of the self-referential. It's about me and what I feel, or about my gratification or my happiness, the great I that must always be satisfied, instead of the self, the I that looks outside of itself and looks to live a life of self-giving love and finds its meaning in that. The ultimate sort of, I guess, irony in this film that really sums all of this cultural crisis up is the very end of the film, the climax, and I guess this should normally be the moment where you find the peak of happiness, really, but the climax of this documentary film is her receiving her Grammy Awards, the nominations and the victory that she achieves at the Grammy Awards. And it's such an irony. Here's this young girl mired in this nihilism, and the culture, the best it can offer her is a little meaningless gold trinket. That's it. And what's really missing in all of this is, despite the beauty of her talent, and there is a real beauty to this, it doesn't point us to what is beautiful. It's not pointing us to what is good and what is true. It's simply a beautiful mirror which reflects a great darkness, a great vacuousness, a great lie, a great nihilism. You see, Billie Eilish, I think, is exposing the true nature of the heart of our current culture that so many people find themselves drowning in. But here's the great irony in this. Unlike a lot of other musicians and artists who are part of that false world, that vacuous world of nihilism, Billie Eilish is actually extremely truthful. Those other artists are providing these absurd sort of hedonistic, pleasure-centric, self-gratification distractions. It's this bubblegum pop that's all about sexual promiscuity and everything else. It's a lie. It's a distraction. But what Billie Eilish is doing, she's very much part of that artistic world, but she speaks truthfully about the heart of what's really going on there, about the pitch black nihilism and the lack of meaning and the lack of hope, and ultimately the ultimate end of that culture, which is not light, it's not goodness, it's not truth, it's darkness. I think most importantly is we all need to learn from the fact there's a very stark and brutal honesty on display here. And if we want to find greater meaning and hope in our lives, we need to turn away from that and look to the light of self-giving love, looking to something beyond ourselves, to other people to give ourselves to, and self-giving love and continual acts of self-giving love. And when we love more authentically, we find a greater and deeper sense of meaning and hope. Thanks for watching this episode of The Conversation. Don't forget to like, share, and give this video a thumbs up. That all helps the channel. And wherever you're watching, please subscribe. If you're on YouTube, don't forget to hit the little notifications bell as well. That way you'll get updated about every new piece of content that we publish. A huge thank you to everyone who is supporting us at patreon.com/leftfootmedia. For as little as $1 a month, you can help to ensure that this great content keeps happening. So that's patreon.com/leftfootmedia. As little as $1 a month, or as much as you'd like to contribute. And a huge thank you, as I said, to everyone who made today's episode possible. You guys are awesome. I'll see you next time on The Conversation.